It stood sentinel, its carved face gazing with unblinking eyes upon Ned Stark as he knelt before it. His breath misted in the air, and his gloved hands rested on the hilt of ice, the greatsword planted point down in the earth. He had come here to pray, to seek guidance from the old gods, but the weight of his secret pressed heavier than ever. For 17 years he had borne it alone, a burden that gnawed at his honor and strained the love he held for his wife, Catelyn. Tonight he would unburden himself. Tonight he would tell her the truth about Jon Snow. Ned rose, his cloak dusted with frost, and made his way back to the keep. The halls of Winterfell were quiet. The household settled for the night. He climbed the steps to the lord's chambers where Catelyn awaited. She sat by the fire, her auburn hair catching the light as she mended one of Robb's tunics. Her hands stilled when she saw him, her blue eyes searching his face. "You look troubled, Ned," she said, setting the needlework aside. "What weighs on you?" He closed the door and stood before her, the words he had rehearsed 1,000 times tangling in his throat. "Catelyn," he began, his voice low, "there is something I must tell you, something I should have told you long ago." Her brow furrowed and she rose, crossing her arms. "What is it? You're frightening me." Ned took a breath, steadying himself. "It's about Jon. About his mother. And his father." Catelyn's expression hardened. She had never spoken ill of Jon in Ned's presence, but he knew the boy's existence pained her, a living reminder of the one betrayal she believed Ned had committed. "What more is there to say?" she asked, her voice tight. "I have raised him as my own, as you asked, though it cuts me every day." Ned stepped closer, his hands outstretched. "You've been stronger than I had any right to ask, but you deserve the truth. Jon is not my son, Catelyn. He is my nephew. His mother was Lyanna, and his father was Rhaegar Targaryen." The silence that followed was deafening. Catelyn's eyes widened, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. She sank back into her chair, her hands gripping the armrests. "Lyanna," she whispered. "Rhaegar! Ned, what are you saying?" He knelt before her, taking her hands in his. They were cold, trembling. "At the end of Robert's rebellion, when I found Lyanna in the Tower of Joy, she was dying. She had given a birth to a son, Jon. She made me swear to protect him, to keep him safe from Robert, from anyone who would see a Targaryen heir as a threat. I claimed him as my own to shield him. I've carried this lie ever since, not because I doubted you, but because the fewer who knew, the safer he would be." Catelyn pulled her hands free, her face a storm of emotions, shock, anger, relief, and something deeper, something wounded. "All these years," she said, her voice breaking, "I thought you had betrayed me. I thought you loved another. And now you tell me this? That Jon is a Targaryen? A prince?" Ned nodded, his heart heavy. "I wanted to tell you, Catelyn. Every day I wanted to. But Robert would have killed him. And even now, if the truth were known, Jon would be hunted. Oh, I couldn't risk it." She stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The firelight cast long shadows across the room. "And what now, Ned? Why tell me now, after all this time?" "Because I can't carry it alone anymore," he admitted. "And because you've borne this pain unjustly. You're my wife, my partner in all things. I trust you with my life, with our children's lives. I trust you with this." Catelyn turned, her eyes glistening. "Do you know what it's been like, Ned? To see Jon grow, to see your features in him, or so I thought, and to wonder who his mother was, what she meant to you. You said, then now you tell me he's Lyanna's son, a Targaryen. Do you realize what this means? If anyone discovers this, it's not just Jon who's in danger, it's all of us. Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon, they'd all be tainted by this secret." "I know," Ned said, rising. "That's why it must remain between us. No one else can know. Not Robb, not Jon himself, not yet." Catelyn laughed, a bitter sound. "And what am I to do with this truth? Pretend nothing has changed? Look at Jon and see a prince instead of a bastard? Or worse, a threat to our family?" Ned crossed to her, gently taking her shoulders. "You're stronger than anyone I know, Catelyn. You've raised Jon with kindness despite the pain it caused you. Now, knowing the truth, I ask you to help me protect him. He's Lyanna's son, the last piece of her I have. And he's a good lad. You know that." She looked into his eyes, searching for something. Reassurance, perhaps, or the man she had married. At last she nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "I'll keep your secret, Ned. For you, for Lyanna, for Jon. But don't ask me to love him as my own. Not yet." "I won't," he said, relief flooding him. "Thank you, Catelyn." They stood there, the fire crackling softly, the weight of the truth settling between them like a new foundation. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. The days that followed were strange, fragile. Catelyn watched Jon with new eyes, noting the subtle differences she had never allowed herself to see. His dark hair and gray eyes were Stark-like. Yes, but there was a grace to his movements, a quiet intensity that reminded her of the tales she'd heard of Rhaegar Targaryen. She found herself torn between pity and fear. Jon was no longer the symbol of Ned's infidelity, but he was something far more dangerous. A hidden dragon in the heart of Winterfell. Jon, unaware of the seismic shift in his foster mother's heart, continued his duties. He trained with Robb in the yard, sparred with Theon Greyjoy, and helped Bran with his archery. But Catelyn noticed the way he lingered at the edges of family gatherings, the quiet longing in his eyes. She had always attributed it to his bastard status, but now she wondered if it was something deeper, a legacy of his true parentage. One afternoon, as she oversaw the household accounts, Jon approached her in the great hall. He carried a bundle of furs, his cheeks flushed from the cold. "My lady," he said, bowing slightly. "Maester Luwin asked me to bring these to you. He said they're for the guest chambers in case the king's party arrives early." Catelyn took the furs, her fingers brushing his. She forced a smile, though her heart raced. "Thank you, Jon. You're diligent, as always." He hesitated, as if sensing the shift in her tone. "Is something wrong, my lady?" "No!" she said quickly, too quickly. "Nothing's wrong. Go on now. Robb will be waiting for you in the yard." Jon nodded and left, but his glance lingered, curious and wary. Catelyn cursed herself silently. She would need to be more careful. If Jon suspected anything, he might ask questions, and questions could unravel everything. That night she and Ned spoke again, this time in the privacy of their chambers. "He notices things," Catelyn said, pacing. "Jon, he's not a fool. If I act differently, he'll wonder why." Ned sat by the fire, his expression grave. "Then we must be steadfast. Treat him as you always have. The less he suspects, the better." "But what if he learns the truth?" she pressed. "He's nearly a man grown, Ned. He's restless. What if he leaves Winterfell, seeks his own path? A Targaryen loose in the world, even unknowingly, could draw attention." Ned's jaw tightened. "I've thought of that. I've considered sending him to the Wall. The Night's Watch would keep him safe, far from court intrigues. He's spoken of it himself, you know." Catelyn stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. "The Wall? You'd send Lyanna's son to freeze in that wasteland? To live among thieves and murderers?" "It's not what I want," Ned said, his voice heavy. "But it might be the safest place for him. The Watch vows to take no part in the realm's conflicts. He'd be beyond Robert's reach, beyond anyone who might suspect his blood." Catelyn shook her head. "And what of his heart, Ned? He's your nephew, not some pawn to be hidden away. Lyanna would never forgive you." Ned's eyes darkened. "Lyanna is gone. My duty is to the living, to Jon, to our children, to you. If the Wall keeps him alive, it's a price I'll pay." She wanted to argue, to rail against the injustice of it, but she saw the pain in Ned's eyes. He was torn, as she was, between love and duty. "We'll speak of this later," she said at last. "For now, we keep him close and watch him." Ned nodded, and they fell into an uneasy silence, the specter of Jon's true heritage looming over them. Weeks passed, and the news of King Robert Baratheon's impending visit to Winterfell brought a flurry of activity. The castle buzzed with preparations, cleaning, stocking provisions, readying guest chambers. Catelyn threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction. But the knowledge of Jon's parentage colored every decision. She found herself insisting that Jon be kept busy with tasks away from the main household, ostensibly to free up space for the royal party, but in truth, to limit his exposure to Robert and his court. Ned, too, was cautious. He spoke with Jon privately, encouraging him to focus on his training and to avoid drawing attention during the king's visit. Jon, ever dutiful, agreed, though Catelyn saw the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. He had hoped perhaps to catch the king's eye, to prove himself more than a bastard. As the day of Robert's arrival drew near, Catelyn's fears grew. Robert was a jovial man, but but his hatred for the Targaryens was legendary. If he suspected even for a moment that Jon was more than Ned's bastard, the consequences would be catastrophic. And then there was Cersei Lannister, the queen, with her sharp eyes and sharper tongue. Catelyn had met her only once, years ago, but she remembered the way Cersei's gaze seemed to peel away secrets. The night before the royal party was due, Catelyn found Jon in the Godswood, sitting beneath the weirwood. He was sharpening his sword, the rhythmic scrape of stone on steel echoing softly. She hesitated, then approached, her cloak drawn tight against the chill. "Jon," she said, her voice softer than usual, "it's late. You should be resting." He looked up, startled, and stood. "My lady, I just needed some quiet." She nodded, studying him. In the moonlight, his features seemed sharper, more regal. She pushed the thought away. "The king's visit will be trying for us all," she said. "You'll need your strength." Jon's eyes met hers, searching. "Is that why you've kept me so busy? To keep me out of the way?" Catelyn's breath caught. He was too perceptive. "It's for the good of Winterfell," she said carefully. "The king's party is large, and we must all do our part." He nodded, but she saw the doubt in his expression. "I understand, my lady. I'll do as Lord Stark asks." As he turned to leave, Catelyn's heart twisted. "Jon," she called after him. He paused, looking back. "You're a good son to Ned," she said, the word surprising even herself. "He's proud of you." Jon's face softened, a rare smile breaking through. "Thank you, my lady." She watched him go, her mind racing. She had meant to reassure him, to ease his suspicions, but the words had come from a place of truth. Jon was a good lad, caught in a web of secrets he didn't understand, and for the first time Catelyn felt not just fear for him, but a flicker of protectiveness. The royal party arrived the next day, a cavalcade of banners and gleaming armor. King Robert, broader and grayer than Ned remembered, embraced his old friend with a booming laugh. Queen Cersei followed, her golden hair gleaming, her brother, a Jaime Lannister, at her side in his white Kingsguard cloak. The court filled Winterfell's courtyard, a dazzling array of lords and ladies, knights and retainers. Catelyn stood with Ned, their children arrayed behind them. Jon was there too, at the back. His expression carefully neutral. She watched Robert closely, searching for any sign that he noticed Jon, but the king's attention was on Ned and Robb, his laughter drowning out all else. That night, the great hall hosted a feast, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat and spiced wine. Robert regaled the hall with the tales of his youth, while Cersei sat in cool silence, her eyes scanning the room. Jaime Lannister, seated near the high table, drank deeply, his gaze lingering on Catelyn more than she liked. As the night wore on, Catelyn noticed Jon slip out of the hall, likely to escape the revelry. She excused herself and followed, her heart pounding. She found him in the courtyard, staring at the stars. "Jon," she said, approaching, "you should be inside. The king might notice your absence." He turned, his expression guarded. "I'm not one for feasts, my lady, and I doubt the king cares where I am." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're part of this family, Jon. Your place is with us." He looked at her, surprised, and for a moment she thought he might ask why her tone had changed, why she seemed to care. But he only nodded. "I'll go back," he said. As they returned to the hall, Catelyn's mind churned. The truth had changed everything. Her marriage, her view of Jon, her fears for the future. Robert's presence was a stark reminder of the danger Jon's heritage posed, and yet, for the first time, she felt a resolve to protect him, not just for Ned's sake, but for his own. The feast continued, the hall alive with laughter and song, but beneath it all, Catelyn felt the stirrings of a new purpose. Jon Snow was no longer a wound in her heart, but a charge to be guarded, and in the Game of Thrones she would play her part to keep him safe. The feast in Winterfell's great hall stretched into the late hours, the air heavy with the scent of roasted boar, mulled wine, and the clamor of King Robert's court. Torches flickered, casting long shadows across the stone walls, and the din of laughter and song filled the space. Catelyn Stark sat at the high table, her posture composed, but her mind was a storm. Jon Snow's true parentage, Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, lay like a blade against her heart, sharpened by the presence of King Robert Baratheon, whose hatred for the Targaryens was as fierce as his love for wine. Ned sat beside her, his face a mask of stoic courtesy as he listened to Robert's booming tales of battles long past. Their children, Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and Rickon, were scattered among the tables, mingling with the royal party. Jon, however, had returned to the hall at Catelyn's urging and now sat near the back, his dark eyes fixed on his plate. She stole glances at him, noting the way he held himself apart, a boy caught between worlds, unaware of the dragon's blood in his veins. Across the hall, Queen Cersei Lannister presided with icy grace, her golden hair gleaming under the torchlight. Her brother Jaime Lannister lounged beside her, his white Kingsguard cloak draped carelessly over one shoulder. Catelyn felt Jaime's gaze linger on her more than once, his green eyes sharp with amusement or something darker. She ignored him, focusing instead on Robert, who was now deep in his cups, his face flushed as he roared about the Battle of the Trident. "Rhaegar, that silver-haired bastard!" Robert slurred, slamming his goblet on the table. "Thought he could steal my Lyanna and live! I smashed his chest in, Ned! Sent him to the stranger with my hammer!" Ned's hand tightened around his own goblet, but his voice remained steady. Robert, you ended the war." Catelyn's stomach churned. She glanced at Jon, praying he hadn't heard the king's words. But Jon's head was bowed, his expression unreadable. She forced herself to breathe, to smile, to play the part of the dutiful Lady of Winterfell. The truth about Jon was a secret she and Ned alone carried, and it must remain so, especially now, with Robert's court filling their halls. As the feast wore on, Catelyn excused herself, claiming a need to check on the younger children. In truth, she needed air, a moment to gather her thoughts. She slipped into the corridor, the cool stone walls a relief after the stifling heat of the hall. But she'd barely reached the courtyard when she heard footsteps behind her. "Lady Stark," came a smooth voice, laced with mockery. Jaime Lannister stepped into the moonlight, his golden hair catching the glow. "Fleeing the revelry so soon?" Catelyn stiffened, turning to face him. "Sir Jaime, I have duties to attend. The king's visit demands much of us." He smirked, leaning against a pillar. "Duties, of course, yet you seem distracted. Something weighing on you, perhaps? A northern secret?" Her heart skipped, but she kept her expression neutral. "Winterfell has no secrets from its guests, sir. Only the burdens of hospitality." Jaime's eyes narrowed, his smile not quite reaching them. "You're a careful woman, Lady Stark. I admire that. But careful women often hide the most interesting truths." Catelyn met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "And bold men often see truths where none exist. Good night, sir." She turned and walked away, her pulse racing. Jaime Lannister was no fool, and his curiosity was a danger she hadn't anticipated. Had he sensed something amiss? Or was he merely toying with her, as lions played with prey? Either way, she would need to be vigilant. The Lannisters were as much a threat as Robert's wrath. Perhaps more so. The next morning, Winterfell buzzed with activity. Robert had announced his desire to hunt in the Wolfswood, and the household scrambled to prepare. Ned organized the hunting party, while Catelyn oversaw the kitchens and ensured the royal retinue was well fed. Jon, as usual, was tasked with practical duties, readying horses, checking supplies, kept safely away from the king's notice. But Catelyn couldn't shake her unease. Jaime's words lingered, and Cersei's watchful presence was a constant pressure. The queen had taken to strolling Winterfell's halls, her ladies trailing like shadows, her eyes missing nothing. Catelyn had caught her studying Jon once, her lips curving in a faint, unreadable smile. Did she suspect something? Or was Catelyn's fear making her see threats where none existed? She sought Ned in the armory where he was inspecting spears for the hunt. The clatter of metal filled the air and the scent of oil and leather was sharp. Ned looked up as she entered, his gray eyes weary. "Catelyn," he said, setting a spear aside. "You look troubled." She closed the door, ensuring they were alone. "Jaime Lannister spoke to me last night," she said, keeping her voice low. "He hinted at secrets, Ned. I don't trust him. And Cersei, she watches Jon too closely." Ned's jaw tightened. "Jaime's always been a snake, and Cersei's worse, but they have no reason to suspect Jon's parentage. He's my bastard as far as the world knows. We must keep it that way." "But what if they dig?" Catelyn pressed. "The Lannisters have spies, resources. If they sense a weakness, they'll exploit it. And Robert, if he even dreams of a Targaryen under our roof..." Ned stepped closer, his voice firm. "They won't find anything because there's nothing to find. Jon is my son in every way that matters. You've seen how he carries himself. Humble and dutiful. He draws no attention. Catelyn shook her head. He's restless, Ned. I see it in him. He's 17, nearly a man. He speaks of the wall, of finding his own place. What if he leaves? A Targaryen in the world, even unknowingly, could spark rumors. Ned's expression darkened. I've thought of that. The wall might be his best path. It would keep him safe, far from court intrigues. Safe? Catelyn's voice rose, then softened as she remembered their surroundings. You'd send Lyanna's son to that frozen prison? To live among outcasts? It's not what I want, Ned said, his voice heavy. But it's a life, a purpose. And it would protect him from Robert, from the Lannisters, from anyone who might uncover the truth. Catelyn's hands clenched at her sides. And what of his heart, Ned? He's your nephew, not a piece to be moved on a Savas board. Lyanna would want more for him. Ned's eyes met hers, pained but resolute. Lyanna is dead. My duty is to the living, to Jon, to our children, to you. If the wall keeps him alive, it's a price I'll pay. They stood in silence, the weight of their shared secret pressing down. At last Catelyn nodded, though her heart rebelled. We'll watch him closely during the king's visit. No risks, Ned. Not with the Lannisters sniffing about. He agreed, and she left the armory, her mind churning. She had promised to protect Jon, but the how of it eluded her. Every choice seemed fraught with peril. That afternoon the hunting party set out, a grand procession of lords and knights and retainers. Robert led the way, his laughter echoing through the Wolfswood, with Ned and Robb at his side. Jon remained at Winterfell, tasked with training the younger boys in the yard. Catelyn watched from a window as he instructed Bran, his movements patient but precise. There was a quiet strength in him, a nobility she hadn't allowed herself to see before. It stirred something in her. Pride, perhaps, or a mother's instinct she hadn't expected. But her thoughts were interrupted by Sansa, who approached with a worried frown. Mother, the Queen has asked for you. She's in those guest chambers, and she seemed insistent. Catelyn's stomach tightened. Thank you, Sansa. I'll go to her. She found Cersei in the finest guest chamber, seated by a window overlooking the courtyard. The Queen's green eyes flicked up as Catelyn entered, her smile cool. Lady Stark, how kind of you to join me. Your Grace, Catelyn said, inclining her head. How may I serve you? Cersei gestured to a chair. Sit. I find Winterfell intriguing. So different from King's Landing, all this stone and silence. It must breed loyalty, yes? Or secrets. Catelyn sat, her spine straight. Winterfell is a simple place, Your Grace. We value honor and duty. Honor. Cersei mused, her fingers tracing the rim of a goblet. A northern virtue. Tell me, Lady Stark, what do you make of your husband's bastard? Jon, is it? A quiet boy, but striking. He has a certain presence. Catelyn's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone even. Jon is a good lad, dutiful like his father. He keeps to himself. Cersei's smile widened, sharp as a blade. Like his father. Yes, I see the resemblance. Or perhaps I see something else. The North is full of mysteries, isn't it? Catelyn forced a smile. Only the mysteries of snow and ice, Your Grace. If you'll excuse me, I have duties to attend. Cersei waved a hand dismissing her, but her eyes followed Catelyn to the door. As Catelyn stepped into the corridor, her knees felt weak. Cersei suspected something. She was sure of it. But what? A vague suspicion or something more concrete? She needed to warn Ned, but he was still in the Wolfswood. The hunting party returned at dusk, flush with success. They had felled a massive stag, and Robert's mood was jubilant. The hall filled once more for dinner, though the affair was less formal, with many of the court weary from the day's ride. Catelyn sat beside Ned, her voice low as she recounted her encounter with Cersei. "She's fishing," Ned murmured, his eyes on his plate. "She has no proof, only guesses. We stay the course." But Catelyn wasn't so sure. As the meal progressed, she noticed Jaime Lannister speaking with Theon Greyjoy, their heads bent close. Theon, ever eager to ingratiate himself with the powerful, was laughing, gesturing animatedly. Catelyn's unease grew. Theon knew little of Jon's true nature, but he was perceptive, and his tongue was loose. If Jaime was probing, Theon might unwittingly feed his curiosity. After the meal, Catelyn sought Jon in the yard, where he was sharpening his sword by torchlight. The rhythmic scrape of stone on steel was soothing, but his expression was troubled. "Jon," she said, approaching, "you've done well today. The boys look up to you." He paused, looking up. "Thank you, my lady. I try to teach them what I can." She hesitated, then sat on a nearby bench, gesturing for him to join her. "You've been quiet since the king arrived. Is something on your mind?" Jon set the sword aside, his eyes wary. "It's nothing, my lady. Just... the king's visit makes me think of my place here. I'm not like Robb or the others. I don't belong at the high table." Catelyn's heart ached. She wanted to tell him the truth, to ease his pain, but she couldn't. Not yet. "You belong in Winterfell," she said instead, her voice firm. "You're a Stark in all but name. Never doubt that." He looked at her, surprised by the warmth in her tone. "You've never spoken to me like this before." She swallowed, forcing a smile. "Perhaps I should have. You're a good son to Ned, Jon. And to me." Jon's expression softened, but before he could reply, a shadow fell across them. Jaime Lannister stood at the edge of the yard, his white cloak stark against the darkness. "A touching scene," he said, his voice light but edged. "The Lady of Winterfell and her husband's bastard, sharing a moment. How... familial." Catelyn rose, her voice cold. "Sir Jaime, do you require something?" He stepped closer, his eyes flicking between her and Jon. "Only a word, Lady Stark. I've been speaking with young Greyjoy. He tells me your bastard has dreams of the Wall. A curious choice for a boy with such... potential." Jon stiffened, but Catelyn spoke before he could. "Jon's choices are his own, sir, and they're no concern of yours." Jaime's smile was predatory. "Everything in Winterfell concerns me, my lady." "The king is here, after all, and I serve the king." He turned and walked away, leaving a chill in his wake. Catelyn looked at Jon, who was staring after Jaime, his jaw tight. "What did he mean by that?" Jon asked. "Nothing," Catelyn said quickly. "He's a Lannister. They thrive on stirring trouble. Pay him no mind." But Jon's eyes were sharp, questioning. "You've been different, my lady. Kinder. And now this. Is there something I should know?" Catelyn's breath caught. She wanted to reassure him, to lie, but the words stuck. "You're part of this family," she said at last. "That's all you need to know." He nodded, but she saw the doubt in his eyes. As they parted, Catelyn's resolve hardened. The Lannisters were circling, and Jon's safety was at risk. She would need to act, to outmaneuver them before their suspicions took root. But how? The answer eluded her, and the weight of the truth grew heavier with each passing day. That night, as she lay beside Ned, she whispered, "We can't wait for the king to leave." "We need a plan, Ned. For Jon." He took her hand, his grip firm. "We'll find a way, Catelyn, together." But as sleep eluded her, Catelyn stared into the darkness, the specter of Jon's heritage looming larger than ever. The Game of Thrones was upon them, and Winterfell was no longer a sanctuary. It was a battlefield, and Jon Snow was at its heart. The dawn broke cold over Winterfell, the sky a bruised gray that promised snow. Catelyn Stark stood at the window of her chambers, her breath fogging the glass as she watched the courtyard below. Servants bustled, preparing for another day of King Robert's visit, while the royal banners snapped in the wind. Her eyes sought Jon Snow, who was already in the yard, drilling with Robb and Theon Greyjoy under Sir Roderick Castle's watchful eye. His movements were precise, his focus unwavering, but Catelyn saw the tension in his shoulders, the weight of something unspoken. Since her conversation with him the previous night, and Jaime Lannister's unsettling intrusion, she feared Jon was beginning to sense the currents swirling around him. The truth of his parentage, Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, had reshaped Catelyn's world. No longer was Jon the bastard who haunted her marriage. He was a hidden prince, a danger to her family, and a charge she had sworn to protect. But the Lannisters' presence, with their sharp eyes and sharper ambitions, threatened to unravel everything. Cersei's probing questions, Jaime's veiled threats, and now the possibility that Theon had fed their curiosity. It was a noose tightening around Winterfell. Ned entered the chamber, his boots heavy on the stone floor. He had been up before dawn, meeting with Maester Luwin to discuss provisions for the royal party. His face was lined with fatigue, but his gray eyes were sharp as he met Catelyn's gaze. "You're up early," he said, crossing to her. "Trouble sleeping?" She turned from the window, her voice low. "Jaime Lannister is trouble, Ned. He spoke to me last night after I talked with Jon. He mentioned Theon and said Jon has potential. He's fishing. And I don't trust Theon to keep his mouth shut." Ned's jaw tightened. Theon's a fool, but he knows nothing of Jon's true parentage. Jaime's just stirring the pot, looking for weaknesses. "And Cersei?" Catelyn pressed. "She's been watching Jon, Ned. I saw it at the feast, and yesterday she questioned me about him. She called him striking. She suspects something, I'm sure of it." Ned ran a hand through his hair, his expression grim. "They have no proof. Jon's my bastard as far as anyone knows, but we can't afford mistakes. We keep him out of their sight as much as possible." Catelyn nodded, though her heart rebelled. Hiding Jon felt like betraying him, especially now that she saw him not as a stain on her honor, but as Lyanna's son, a boy caught in a web he didn't understand. "He's asking questions," she said softly. "Last night, he noticed I've been kinder to him. He's not a child anymore, Ned. He senses something's wrong." Ned's eyes darkened. "Then we give him no reason to dig deeper. I'll speak to him, reinforce his duties here, and we'll watch Theon. If he's feeding the Lannisters gossip, I'll deal with him." Catelyn reached for his hand, her fingers cold against his warmth. "We need a plan, Ned. Not just for now, but for Jon's future. The Wall, I know you think it's safe, but it's no life for him. Lyanna's son deserves better." Ned's grip tightened. "I want better for him, Catelyn, but safety comes first. If the Lannisters or Robert catch even a whiff of the truth, Jon's life is forfeit, and ours with it." She pulled away, pacing to the fire. "Then we outmaneuver them. We keep Jon close, but we prepare him. Train him, educate him, make him strong enough to face whatever comes. If he must go to the Wall, let it be his choice, not our desperation." Ned watched her, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You've changed, Catelyn. A month ago you could barely speak Jon's name. Now you're his champion." Her cheeks warmed, but she met his gaze. "I made a vow to you to protect him, and I see him differently now. He's not just your nephew. He's ours in a way. I won't let the Lannisters destroy him." Ned crossed to her, with his hands gentle on her shoulders. "We'll protect him together, but for now, we play the game. Keep the Lannisters at bay, keep Jon safe, and pray Robert tires of the North soon." She nodded, though the weight of their task pressed heavily. The Game of Thrones was no longer a distant concept. It was here, in their home, and Jon was its unwitting center. The day unfolded in a flurry of activity. Robert demanded a tourney to celebrate his visit, a scaled-down affair and due to Winterfell's remoteness but grand enough to satisfy his ego. The courtyard was transformed, with lists erected and banners hung. Catelyn oversaw the preparations, ensuring the royal party was comfortable, while Ned coordinated the knights and squires who would compete. Jon, to Catelyn's relief, was assigned to assist Sir Roderick in the armory, far from the king's notice, but her relief was short-lived. As she crossed the courtyard, she spotted Theon lounging near the stables, speaking with Jaime Lannister. Theon's laughter carried, and Jaime's smile was all teeth. Catelyn's blood ran cold. She approached, her voice sharp. "Theon!" she called, drawing their attention. "You're needed in the hall. The stewards require your help." Theon's smirk faltered, but he bowed. "Of course, my lady." He sauntered off, leaving Catelyn alone with Jaime. The Kingsguard knight tilted his head, his green eyes gleaming. "Lady Stark, always so diligent. You keep a tight rein on your household." "And you, sir, seem overly interested in it," she replied, her tone icy. "Theon is a ward of Winterfell, not your confidant." Jaime's smile didn't waver. "The boy's entertaining, that's all. He has stories. About your husband's bastard, for instance. Dreams of the Wall, a sense of otherness. Curious, don't you think?" Catelyn's heart pounded, but she forced calm. "Jon's dreams are his own. And you do well to focus on your duties to the king, not gossip." He stepped closer, his voice low. Oh, I serve the king, my lady, but I also serve the truth. And something about your Jon Snow doesn't add up. A bastard, yet so regal. I wonder why." She met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "Wonder all you like, sir. You'll find nothing but a boy raised with honor." Jaime chuckled, stepping back. "We'll see, Lady Stark. We'll see." As he walked away, Catelyn's hands trembled. Jaime was no idle threat. He was a predator, and Jon was his prey. She needed to warn Ned, but first she sought Theon. She found him in the hall, joking with a group of squires. "Theon!" she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "A word!" He followed her to a quiet corner, his expression wary. "What's this about, my lady?" "What did you tell Jaime Lannister about Jon?" she demanded, her eyes boring into his. Theon shifted, his bravado slipping. "Nothing much, just talk. He asked about Jon, his habits, his talk of the wall. I said he's a brooding sort, always on the outside, that's all." Catelyn's anger flared. "That's all? You fed a Lannister gossip about our family, Theon. Do you have any idea what they could do with that?" He paled, his hands raised. "I didn't mean any harm, my lady. Jaime's charming, he buys wine, he—" "Enough," she snapped. "You'll say nothing more to him or to anyone about Jon. Do you understand?" Theon nodded, chastened. "Yes, my lady." She dismissed him, her mind racing. Theon's loose tongue was a problem, but Jaime's interest was the real danger. She found Ned in the armory where he was inspecting tourney lances with Jon at his side. The sight of them together, Ned's quiet strength, Jon's earnest focus, stirred her resolve. "Ned," she said, drawing him aside, "Jaime's been questioning Theon about Jon. He's suspicious, and Theon's been careless." Ned's face hardened. "I'll handle Theon, and I'll keep Jon close during the tourney. He'll assist me, not wander." Jon glanced over, sensing the tension. "Is something wrong, my lord?" Ned forced a smile. "Nothing, Jon. Just tourney matters. Stay sharp today." Jon nodded, but his eyes flicked to Catelyn, searching. She turned away, unable to meet his gaze. The boy was too perceptive, and every lie she told him felt like a betrayal. The tourney began at midday, the courtyard alive with color and noise. Robert sat in a raised pavilion, Cersei at his side, while the northern lords and royal retinue filled the stands. Catelyn took her place beside Ned, her children nearby, though Arya was restless, fidgeting with her braid. He stood behind Ned, clad in simple leathers, his role as aide keeping him out of the spotlight. The jousts were spirited, with Robb earning cheers for unseating a Baratheon knight, but Catelyn's attention was on the royal party. Cersei's eyes scanned the crowd, lingering on Jon more than once. Jaime, competing in the lists, rode with effortless grace, his lance splintering against a northern knight's shield. Each time he passed the pavilion, his gaze found Catelyn, his smile a challenge. As the day wore on, Catelyn's unease grew. She leaned close to Ned, her voice a whisper. "Cersei's watching Jon again, and Jaime, he's taunting us." Ned's hand rested on her arm, steadying. "They're testing us. Stay calm. Jon's safe here with us." But safety felt fragile. During a break in the jousts, Robert called for wine and stories, his mood jovial. He beckoned Ned to join him, and Catelyn followed, her heart pounding. Jon remained at the edge of the pavilion, holding Ned's cloak, his presence unobtrusive but impossible to ignore. "Tell me, Ned," Robert boomed, his goblet raised. "Your bastard's a fine lad, eh? Got your look about him. Who was his mother, some tavern wench you tumbled in the war?" The crowd laughed, but Catelyn's blood ran cold. Ned's face was stone, his voice even. "Jon's mother was a good woman, Robert. She's gone now. He's my son, and that's enough." Robert shrugged, already distracted by a new cask of wine, but Cersei's eyes narrowed, and Jaime, standing nearby, tilted his head as if filing the moment away. Catelyn's hands clenched in her lap. They were circling, waiting for a misstep. That evening, as the tourney feast began, Catelyn sought Jon in the Godswood, needing to see him to reassure herself. She found him beneath the weirwood, his sword across his knees, his face etched with thought. "Jon," she said softly, approaching, "you did well today. You kept your head." He looked up, his gray eyes searching. "Thank you, my lady, but the king's question about my mother, it bothered you, didn't it?" Catelyn's breath caught. "The king speaks carelessly, Jon. Don't dwell on it." He stood, his voice quiet but firm. "You and Lord Stark have been different since the king arrived. Protective but distant. If there's something I need to know, tell me. I can handle it." Her heart ached. She wanted to tell him everything, to ease his pain, to give him the truth of his heritage, but the risk was too great. "You're our son," she said, the lie bitter on her tongue. "That's all that matters. Trust us, Jon." He nodded, but the doubt in his eyes cut her deeply. As she left the Godswood, she felt the weight of her deception. Jon deserved better, but the truth could kill him. The next morning, Catelyn woke to a summons from Cersei. The queen awaited her in the guest chambers, her demeanor as cold as the northern wind. Catelyn steeled herself, entering with a courteous smile. "Your Grace," she said, bowing. "How may I serve you?" Cersei stood by the fire, her golden hair loose about her shoulders. "Lady Stark, I've been thinking about your household. Your children are charming, especially young Sansa, but your husband's bastard. He intrigues me. Tell me more about him." Catelyn's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone light. "Jon is a quiet boy, Your Grace. He trains with his brothers, helps with the household. There's little to tell." Cersei's smile was razor sharp. "Oh, I doubt that. He has a certain quality. Almost princely, wouldn't you say? I wonder where he gets it." Catelyn forced a laugh. "From his father's blood, perhaps. The Starks have always been proud." Cersei's eyes gleamed. "Indeed, but pride can hide secrets, can it? I look forward to learning more about your Jon Snow." The threat was clear. As Catelyn left, her mind raced. Cersei was closing in, and Jaime was her blade. They needed to act now. She found Ned in the Great Hall, his face grim as he read a missive from Maester Luwin. "Ned," she said, pulling him aside. "Cersei's pressing harder. She called Jon princely. We can't wait for them to leave. We need to move Jon somewhere safe." Ned's eyes met hers, resolute. "I've been thinking the same. The wall's our best option. I'll speak to Jon tonight. Prepare him. He's strong enough to choose it." Catelyn's heart twisted. "And if he refuses? He's restless, Ned. Not broken. He might seek his own path." Ned's voice was firm. "Then we convince him, for his sake and ours." As they parted, Catelyn's resolve hardened. The Lannisters were a storm gathering, and Jon was the lightning they sought. She would protect him, even if it meant sending him to the edge of the world. But as she watched him in the yard, laughing with Robb, she prayed there was another way, a path where Lyanna's son could live, not just survive. Winterfell's towers stood stark against a sky heavy with the threat of snow, the northern wind carrying a bite that seeped into stone and bone alike. Catelyn Stark stood in the Godswood, her cloak pulled tight, her auburn hair catching flecks of frost. The weirwood's carved face gazed down, its red eyes unyielding as if it knew the secret she carried. Jon Snow, the boy she had once seen as a wound in her marriage, was no bastard but the son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. A hidden prince, a spark that could ignite war, he was both a danger to her family and a charge she had sworn to protect. The truth, shared only with her husband Eddard Stark, had reshaped her world, but it also cast a shadow over every moment, especially now, with King Robert's court filling their halls. The royal visit had dragged into its second week, and the Lannisters' presence was a growing threat. Queen Cersei's probing questions and Jaime Lannister's taunting insinuations had sharpened, their suspicions circling Jon like vultures. Catelyn's encounter with Cersei, where the queen had called Jon princely, had left her rattled, and Jaime's talks with Theon Greyjoy, fishing for gossip about Jon's dreams of the Wall, only deepened her fear. The noose was tightening, and Catelyn knew they could not wait for the royal party to leave. They needed to act, to shield Jon, to protect their children, to preserve Winterfell's fragile peace. Ned had decided to speak to Jon that night, to nudge him toward the Night's Watch, where the Wall's isolation might keep him safe from Robert's hatred and the Lannisters' schemes. But Catelyn's heart rebelled. The Wall was exile, not a life, and Lyanna's son deserved better. Yet what other path was there? The truth of Jon's heritage was a blade held to their throats, and the Lannisters were too close to grasping it. She left the Godswood, her boots crunching on frost, and returned to the keep. The castle hummed with preparations for another feast, this one to celebrate Robert's victory in a recent melee. Catelyn threw herself into her duties, overseeing the kitchens and ensuring the hall was ready, but her thoughts were with Jon. She spotted him in the courtyard, helping Bran with his archery, his patience a quiet counterpoint to Theon's mocking jibes. Jon's dark hair and gray eyes marked him as a Stark, but Catelyn now saw the subtle grace in his movements, a hint of Rowy the Rhaegar's elegance. It stirred a mix of warmth and dread within her. As she crossed the yard, she caught sight of Jaime Lannister near the stables, his white Kingsguard cloak gleaming in the pale light. He was speaking with a royal squire, his laughter sharp and predatory. Catelyn's stomach twisted. Jaime's interest in Jon was no idle game. He was hunting, and she feared he was closer to the truth than she dared admit. She quickened her pace, determined to find Ned before the feast began. She found him in the armory, polishing ice, the greatsword's blade catching the torchlight. His face was etched with fatigue, his movements deliberate, as if pouring his worries into the steel. "Ned," she said, closing the door, "we can't wait. Cersei's questions are too sharp, and Jaime's been seen with Theon again. They're building something, even if they don't know what it is yet." Ned set the sword down, his gray eyes meeting hers. "I know. I'll talk to Jon tonight, after the feast. I'll make him see the wall as an honor, a purpose. He's mentioned it before, he's halfway there." Catelyn's hands clenched. "And if he resists? He's not a boy to be led, Ned. He's asking questions, noticing our fear. Last night he pressed me about why we've been kinder to him. I lied, but he's not fooled." Ned's jaw tightened. "Then we give him enough truth to satisfy him. I'll tell him I want him safe, that the South is no place for a bastard. He trusts me, Catelyn. He will listen." She stepped closer, her voice low but fierce. "He trusts you because you've never lied to him. Don't start now. If you push him to the wall without his heart in it, he'll resent you. And if he learns the truth later, gods, Ned, what then?" Ned's eyes darkened. "The truth would kill him. Robert would hunt him, the Lannisters would use him, and our children would pay the price. The wall is his shield, Catelyn. It's not what I want, but it's what he needs." Her throat tightened. "Lyanna would want more for him, a life, not a sentence." Ned reached for her hand, his grip firm. "Lyanna's gone. My duty is to the living. Jon's safety, our family's safety. It comes first. You know that." She nodded, though her heart ached. "I'll keep Cersei and Jaime distracted tonight. Buy you time to speak with Jon. But Ned, be careful. He's more like you than you realize. Stubborn, honorable. He won't be easily swayed." Ned's lips twitched in a faint smile. "I'll tread lightly. Trust me." She squeezed his hand, then left the armory, her resolve hardening. The feast would be a battlefield, and she would play her part to protect Jon, even if it meant facing lions. The great hall was ablaze with torchlight that evening, the tables groaning under the weight of roasted venison, smoked trout, and honeyed apples. Robert sat at the high table, his laughter booming, while Cersei presided with icy grace, her golden hair catching the light. Jaime lounged nearby, his white cloak a stark contrast to the dark furs of the northern lords. Catelyn took her place beside Ned, her children scattered among the tables, though Jon was absent, tasked with overseeing the stables to keep him from the king's notice. As the meal began, Catelyn watched Cersei closely. The queen's green eyes swept the hall, pausing briefly on the empty space where Jon might have sat. Catelyn forced a smile, engaging Sansa in talk of the southern courts, hoping to draw Cersei's attention. But the queen's gaze was relentless, and when she spoke, her voice carried a subtle edge. "Lady Stark," Cersei said, leaning forward, "your household is so, complete. Yet I notice young Jon is missing tonight. Is he unwell?" Catelyn's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone light. "Jon is tending to duties, your grace. He's a diligent boy, always eager to help." Cersei's smile was thin. "How commendable! A bastard with such devotion is rare." "Tell me, does he favor his mother? I've heard so little about her." The question was a blade, and Catelyn felt its sting. She glanced at Ned, who was deep in conversation with Robert, then turned back to Cersei. "Jon's mother was a northern woman, your grace. She's long gone. He takes after his father in spirit." Cersei's eyes gleamed. "His father? Yes, Lord Stark's influence is clear, yet there's something unique about the boy. A certain grace. I wonder where it comes from." Catelyn forced a laugh, her heart pounding. "The North breeds strong men, your grace, even bastards." Cersei's smile didn't waver, but her gaze held Catelyn's for a moment too long. "Indeed. I look forward to seeing more of 'em." The threat was clear. Catelyn turned to Sansa, asking about her embroidery, but her mind raced. Cersei was probing, and Jaime was no doubt feeding her suspicions. She glanced at the Kingsguard knight, who was laughing with a Baratheon lord, his eyes flicking toward her as if sensing her scrutiny. She needed to warn Ned, but the feast demanded her attention, and Robert's jovial mood kept Ned at his side. As the night wore on, Catelyn noticed Theon at a lower table, drinking heavily and joking with royal squires. His loose tongue was a danger, especially after Jaime's interest in his gossip. She caught Ned's eye nodding toward Theon, and he gave a subtle nod in return. They would deal with him later. When the feast ended, Catelyn slipped into the courtyard, needing air to clear her head. The stars were hidden by clouds, and the torches cast flickering shadows. She was about to return to the keep when she heard voices near the stables. Jon's, low and tense, and another smooth and mocking, Jaime Lannister. She crept closer, her heart in her throat, and peered around a corner. Jon stood with a pitchfork in hand, his posture rigid, while Jaime leaned against a stall, his white cloak pooling at his feet. "You're a curious one, Snow," Jaime was saying, his voice laced with amusement. "A bastard with dreams of the wall, yet you carry yourself like a lord. Tell me, what's your story? Who is your mother, really?" Jon's jaw tightened. "My mother's dead, sir. I'm Lord Stark's son. That's all you need to know." Jaime chuckled, stepping closer. "Oh, I think there's more. The way your lady mother watches you, the way Lord Stark keeps you close but not too close. It's almost as if you're a secret. And I love secrets." Catelyn's blood ran cold. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the night. "Sir Jaime, you're far from the feast, and Jon has duties to attend." Both turned, Jon's eyes wide with surprise, Jaime's narrowing with amusement. "Lady Stark," Jaime said, bowing slightly. "Always so protective. I was merely chatting with the young Snow here." "Chat elsewhere," Catelyn said, her tone icy. "Jon, return to the keep." "Now." Jon hesitated, his gaze flicking between them, then nodded and left, his steps quick. Jaime watched him go, his smile predatory. "You're fierce, my lady, but you can't hide him forever." Catelyn met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "There's nothing to hide, sir. Only a boy and his family. Good night." She turned and walked away, her heart pounding. Jaime's words were a warning, and Jon's tension suggested he was beginning to suspect something. She needed to reach Ned before Jaime did more damage. She found Ned in their chambers, his face grim as he removed his cloak. "Catelyn," he said, seeing her expression. "What's happened?" "Jaime cornered Jon in the stables," she said, her voice low. "He's pressing harder, Ned. He called Jon a secret. And Jon... he's noticing too much. He looked at me like he knows we're hiding something." Ned's hands clenched. "I'll speak to him now, before Jaime gets to him again. I'll make him see the wall as his path." Catelyn grabbed his arm. "Be honest with him, Ned. Not the whole truth, but enough. He deserves that much." Ned nodded, his eyes heavy. "I will. Stay with the children. Keep Cersei occupied tomorrow. We need time." She agreed, though her heart ached. As Ned left to find Jon, she sat by the fire, her mind racing. The Lannisters were closing in, and Jon's safety hung by a thread. She needed to outmaneuver them, to protect her family, but the path forward was shrouded in shadow. Ned found Jon in the God's Wood, sitting beneath the weirwood, his sword across his knees. The boy's face was troubled, his gray eyes fixed on the tree's carved face. Ned approached quietly, his heart heavy with the weight of what he must do. "Jon," he said, sitting beside him, "you're up late?" Jon looked up, his expression guarded. "I needed to think, my lord. Things, feel different. Lady Stark? You, the way the Lannisters watched me? What's going on?" Ned took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "The South is a dangerous place, Jon. The King's Court, the Lannisters. They see threats everywhere. I want you safe, and Winterfell's no longer enough." Jon's eyes narrowed. "Safe? From what? I'm just a bastard. Why would they care about me?" Ned's chest tightened. He wanted to tell Jon the truth, to ease his pain, but the risk was too great. "You're my son," he said, the lie bitter. "That makes you a target for those who would hurt me. I've been thinking the Night's Watch could be your path, a place to make your own name away from court intrigues." Jon's jaw tightened. "The wall! You've never pushed me toward it before. Why now?" Ned met his gaze, his voice firm. "Because I see you, Jon. You're restless, searching for a purpose. The Watch is honorable, a brotherhood. You'd be safe there, and you'd serve the realm." Jon stood pacing. "Safe! You keep saying that. But it feels like you're sending me away. Like there's something you're not telling me." Ned rose, his hand on Jon's shoulder. "I'm telling you what matters. I want you to live, to thrive. Trust me, Jon." Jon's eyes searched his, hurt and doubt mingling. "I've always trusted you, but this... it feels wrong." Ned's heart broke, but he held firm. "Think on it, Jon. The wall's not a punishment. It's a chance." Jon nodded, but his silence was heavy. As Ned left the Godswood, he felt the weight of his deception. Jon was too perceptive, too stubborn. The wall might not hold him, and the truth might find him first. The next morning, Catelyn woke to a summons from Cersei. The queen awaited her in the guest chambers, her right demeanor cold as the northern wind. Catelyn steeled herself, entering with a courteous smile. "Your Grace," she said, bowing. "How may I serve you?" Cersei stood by the fire, her golden hair loose. "Lady Stark, I've been thinking about your household. Your children are charming, but your husband's bastard intrigues me. Tell me more about him." Catelyn's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone light. "Jon is a quiet boy, Your Grace. He trains with his brothers, helps with the household. There's little to tell." Cersei's smile was razor sharp. "Oh, I doubt that. He has a certain quality. Almost princely, wouldn't you say? I wonder where he gets it." Catelyn forced a laugh. "From his father's blood, perhaps." "The Starks have always been proud." Cersei's eyes gleamed. "Indeed, but pride can hide secrets, can it? I look forward to learning more about your Jon Snow." The threat was clear. As Catelyn left, her mind raced. Cersei was closing in, and Jaime was her blade. She found Ned in the Great Hall, his face grim as he read a missive from Maester Luwin. "Ned," she said, pulling him aside. "Cersei's pressing harder. She called Jon princely again. We can't wait. We need to move Jon, somewhere safe." Ned's eyes met hers, resolute. "I spoke to him last night. He's resistant, but I'll keep at it. The wall's our best option. For now, keep Cersei distracted. I'll handle Jon." Catelyn's heart twisted. "And if he refuses? He's restless, Ned, not broken. He might seek his own path." Ned's voice was firm. "Then we convince him, for his sake, and ours." As they parted, Catelyn's resolve hardened. The Lannisters were a storm gathering, and Jon was the lightning they sought. She would protect him, even if it meant sending him to the edge of the world. But as she watched him in the yard, laughing with Robb, she prayed there was another way. A path where Lyanna's son could live, not just survive. The wind howled through Winterfell's battlements, carrying the first flakes of a late autumn snow. The castle was a fortress of stone and secrets, its halls filled with the clamor of King Robert's court, but Catelyn Stark felt the weight of one secret above all. Jon Snow was no bastard, but the son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. A hidden prince, his existence was a spark that could set the realm ablaze, and the Lannisters, Queen Cersei and her brother Jaime, were circling ever closer to that truth. The royal visit, now in its third week, had stretched Catelyn's nerves to breaking. Cersei's pointed questions, Jaime's predatory taunts, and Theon Greyjoy's careless gossip had woven a web of danger around Jon, one that threatened not just him but Catelyn's entire family. Ned had spoken to Jon the previous night, urging him toward the Night's Watch, where the wall's isolation might shield him from Robert's hatred and the Lannisters' schemes. But Jon's resistance, his sharp questions about their sudden protectiveness, had left Catelyn uneasy. He was no longer the boy who accepted his place at the edges of their family. He was a young man, perceptive and restless, sensing the currents of secrecy swirling around him. Catelyn's heart ached for him. Lyanna's son, caught in a game he didn't understand. But fear drove her now. The Lannisters were too close, and time was running out. She stood in her chambers, staring out at the snow-dusted courtyard. Below, Jon sparred with Robb under Sir Roderick's watchful eye, their wooden swords clacking in the crisp air. Jon's movements were precise, his focus intense. But Catelyn saw the tension in his shoulders, the weight of unspoken questions. She had changed towards him, offering kindness where once there was distance, and he had noticed. So had Jaime Lannister, whose encounter with Jon in the stables had set Catelyn's nerves on edge. The Kingsguard Knight's words, "A bastard with dreams of the wall, yet you carry yourself like a lord," echoed in her mind, a warning of how close he was to suspecting the truth. Ned entered, his cloak dusted with snow, his face etched with the strain of their shared burden. He had been meeting with Maester Luwin, discussing provisions for the royal party, but his gray eyes were heavy with worry as he met Catelyn's gaze. "You look like you haven't slept," he said, crossing to her. "What's wrong?" She turned from the window, her voice low. "Jaime's getting bolder, Ned. His talk with Jon last night, he called him a secret. And Cersei's questions are relentless. She's watching Jon, studying him. I'm afraid they're piecing something together." Ned's jaw tightened. "They have no proof. Jon's my bastard as far as the world knows. But I agree, we can't wait. I spoke to Jon last night, and he's resistant to the wall. He senses we're hiding something, but I didn't break." Catelyn's hands clenched. "He's too perceptive. If we push him too hard, he'll dig deeper. And if Jaime or Cersei catch him alone again—" She trailed off, the thought too grim to voice. Ned ran a hand through his hair. "I'll speak to him again today, and softer this time. I'll make him see the watch as his choice, not ours. But we need to keep the Lannisters distracted. Can you handle Cersei?" She nodded, though her stomach churned. "I'll keep her occupied. But Ned, we need a fallback. If Jon won't go to the wall, what then? We can't keep him here with the Lannisters sniffing around." Ned's eyes darkened. "I've thought of that. There's a man I trust, a friend from the war. Howland Reed. He was with me at the Tower of Joy, knows Jon's truth. If it comes to it, we could send Jon to Greywater Watch. The Crannogmen are loyal, and the next marshes would hide him." Catelyn's breath caught. "Send him to the swamps! Ned, that's no better than the wall. He'd be a fugitive, not a man." "It's a last resort," Ned said, his voice firm. "The wall's still our best hope. Jon's strong, Catelyn. He can make a life there, a purpose. We just need to convince him." She stepped closer, her voice fierce. "Then convince him with care. He's Lyanna's son, Ned. He deserves more than being shuffled into exile. If we lose his trust, we lose him." Ned took her hand, his grip steady. "I won't lose him. I'll speak to him after the midday meal. You keep Cersei and Jaime at bay. We're close, Catelyn. We just need a little more time." She squeezed his hand, her resolve hardening. The Game of Thrones was no longer a southern affair. It was here, in their home, and Jon was its heart. She would protect him, even if it meant outwitting lions. The morning passed in a flurry of activity. Robert had demanded a hunt in the Wolfswood, and the castle buzzed with preparations. Catelyn oversaw the kitchens, ensuring provisions for the hunting party, while Ned organized the lords and knights who would join the king. Jon was tasked with readying horses, a duty that kept him safely away from the royal retinue. Catelyn watched him from a distance, noting the quiet intensity in his work, the way he avoided Theon's jibes. Her heart twisted. She wanted to shield him, to tell him the truth, but the risk was too great. As she crossed the courtyard, she spotted Jaime Lannister near the armory, speaking with a royal retainer. His white cloak gleamed, but his smile was all predator, his green eyes scanning the yard. Catelyn's blood ran cold. She had no proof he knew Jon's secret, but his interest was relentless, and Theon's gossip had likely fueled it. She needed to act before he cornered Jon again. She found Theon in the great hall, polishing a bow with exaggerated care. His smirk faded as she approached, her expression stern. "Theon," she said, her voice low, "we need to talk about Jaime Lannister." He shifted, his eyes wary. "What about him, my lady?" "You've been talking to him about Jon," she said, her tone cutting. "Feeding him stories, gossip. Do you have any idea the danger you're courting?" Theon's bravado slipped. "I didn't say much, my lady, just things. Jon's dreams of the wall, how he's always apart," Jaime asked, "and he's persuasive." Catelyn's anger flared. "Persuasive? He's a Lannister, Theon. They don't ask questions for sport. You'll say nothing more to him, or to anyone, about Jon. Do you understand?" He nodded, chastened. Yes, my lady, I swear it. She dismissed him, her mind racing. Theon's promise was shaky at best, and Jaime's curiosity was a fire that needed quenching. She needed to distract him to throw him off Jon's scent. But how? The answer came as she spotted Cersei in the guest wing, her ladies trailing like shadows. The queen was the key. If Catelyn could occupy her, Jaime might follow. She approached Cersei with a courteous smile, her heart pounding. Your Grace, I thought you might enjoy a tour of Winterfell's library. Maester Luwin has rare texts from the Age of Heroes, tales of the North you won't find in King's Landing. Cersei's green eyes flicked up, her smile cool. A generous offer, Lady Stark, but I'm more interested in your household. Young Jon, for instance. He's so elusive. Where is he today? Catelyn's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone light. Jon's helping with the hunt preparations, Your Grace. He's a dutiful boy, always busy. Cersei's smile sharpened. Dutiful? Yes, I've noticed. He has a certain bearing, almost regal. I wonder what his mother was like. The question was a trap, and Catelyn sidestepped it. His mother was a northern woman, long gone. Jon takes after his father in heart and honor. Now, about the library... Cersei waved a hand, dismissing the offer. Perhaps another time. I think I'll join the hunt. Fresh air will do me good. Catelyn's stomach sank as Cersei swept past, her ladies in tow. The queen's interest in Jon was unrelenting, and her presence at the hunt would put her closer to him. Catelyn needed to warn Ned, but he was already in the Wolfswood with Robert. She turned to find Sansa, instructing her to keep an eye on Arya and the younger boys, then hurried to the stables, hoping to catch Jon before he joined the hunt. She found him saddling a horse, his movements swift but tense. He looked up as she approached, his gray eyes wary. "My lady," he said, bowing slightly, "is something wrong?" Catelyn hesitated, then spoke softly. "Jon, I need you to stay at Winterfell today. Let Theon handle the horses for the hunt." His brow furrowed. "Why? I'm nearly done here. The king's party needs—" "The king's party will manage," she said, her voice firm. "I need you here helping Sir Roderick with the younger boys. It's important." Jon's eyes searched hers, doubt flickering. "This is about the Lannisters, isn't it? Jaime Lannister last night. He said things. Called me a secret. And you've been different, my lady. Kinder, but guarded." Catelyn's heart twisted. She wanted to tell him everything, to ease his pain, to give him the truth of his heritage, but the risk was too great. "Jon," she said, her voice steady, "you're part of this family. We're protecting you, that's all. Trust us." He held her gaze, his jaw tight. "I want to trust you, but it feels like there's more. Something you're not saying." She reached out, touching his arm briefly. "Stay at Winterfell today. For me." Jon nodded, though his expression was troubled. "All right, my lady." As he turned back to the horse, Catelyn's chest ached. She was lying to him, and he knew it, but she had no choice, not with Cersei and Jaime closing in. She left the stables, her resolve hardening. She would keep the Lannisters at bay, buy Ned time to sway Jon, and pray they could outmaneuver the storm gathering around them. The hunting party returned at dusk, their mood jubilant despite the snow. They had felled a massive boar, and Robert's laughter echoed through the courtyard as he recounted the kill. Ned rode at his side, his face a mask of calm, but Catelyn saw the strain in his eyes as he dismounted. She approached him, pulling him aside as the party dispersed. "Did you see Jon?" she asked, her voice low. Ned shook his head. "He stayed behind, as you asked. I'll speak to him tonight, after the feast. How did you fare with Cersei?" She recounted the queen's probing, her refusal of the library tour, her insistence on joining the hunt. "She's relentless, Ned. And Jaime's feeding her suspicions. I caught him with Theon again this morning, before I warned Theon off." Ned's face darkened. "I'll deal with Theon, and I'll keep Jon close tonight. We're running out of time, Catelyn. If Jon won't choose the wall, we may need to consider Grey Water Watch sooner than I'd like." Catelyn's stomach twisted. "Let's not give up on the wall yet. But Ned, be gentle with him. He's hurting, and he's smarter than we give him credit for." Ned nodded, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. I'll do my best." The feast that night was a raucous affair, the hall filled with the scent of roasted boar and spiced wine. Robert held court, his stories growing wilder with each goblet, while Cersei sat in cool silence, her eyes scanning the room. Jaime was at her side, his laughter sharp, his gaze flicking toward Catelyn more than once. Jon, at Ned's insistence, sat at a lower table with Robb and Theon, his presence unobtrusive but impossible to ignore. Catelyn watched him closely, noting the way he kept his head down, avoiding the royal party's notice. But Cersei's gaze found him, her lips curving in a faint, unreadable smile. Catelyn's heart pounded. She leaned toward Ned, her voice a whisper. "She's watching him again! We need to move faster." Ned nodded, his expression grim. "I'll take him to the Godswood after this. No interruptions." But the feast dragged on, and Robert's demands kept Ned at the high table. Catelyn engaged Cersei in small talk, steering the conversation to King's Landing in the south, but the Queen's responses were clipped, her attention elsewhere. When Jaime rose to toast the king, his eyes met Catelyn's, his smile a challenge. She forced a smile in return, her mind racing. They were running out of time. As the feast ended, Ned finally slipped away, gesturing for Jon to follow. Catelyn watched them go, her heart in her throat. She stayed behind, keeping Cersei and Jaime in her sights, but her thoughts were with Ned and Jon. The Godswood would be their sanctuary, but the truth, or the lack of it, might break them. In the Godswood, Ned led Jon to the weirwood, its red eyes glowing in the torchlight. The snow fell softly, blanketing the ground, and the silence was heavy between them. Jon's face was guarded, his gray eyes searching Ned's. "You wanted to talk, my lord," Jon said, his voice low. "About the wall again?" Ned nodded, sitting on a stone bench. "Aye, Jon. I've been thinking on your future. You're nearly a man grown, and Winterfell, it's not enough for you. The Night's Watch could be your place, a brotherhood where your name doesn't matter, only your honor." Jon's jaw tightened. "You said that last night, but it feels like you're pushing me away. Why? What's changed?" Ned's chest ached. He wanted to tell Jon the truth, to give him Lyanna's love, Rhaegar's legacy, but the risk was too great. "The South is dangerous, Jon. The King's Court, the Lannisters, they see threats everywhere. I want you safe, and the wall's the best place for that." Jon stood pacing. "Safe from what? I'm a bastard, my lord. No one cares about me. But you and Lady Stark, you're scared. I see it. Jaime Lannister called me a secret, and now you're sending me to the edge of the world. What aren't you telling me?" Ned rose, his hand on Jon's shoulder. "I'm telling you what matters. You're my son, Jon. I want you to live, to find a purpose. The Watch is honorable, a chance to be more than a bastard." Jon's eyes glistened, hurt and anger mingling. "I've always trusted you, but this... it feels like a lie. If there's something about me, about my mother, telling me, I can handle it." Ned's heart broke. He wanted to confess, to ease Jon's pain, but the truth would only endanger him. "Your mother was a good woman," he said, the lie bitter. "She's gone, and I'm doing what she'd want, keeping you safe. Trust me, Jon." Jon pulled away, his voice raw. "I want to, but I need more than this." Ned watched him go, the snow swallowing his footsteps. He had failed to sway him, and the truth loomed closer than ever. As he returned to the keep, he found Catelyn waiting, her face pale. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ned shook his head. "He's resistant, angry. He knows we're hiding something. We may need to move faster than I thought." Catelyn's hands trembled. "Cersei and Jaime are relentless, Ned. If Jon won't go to the wall, we need another plan. Greywater Watch?" Ned nodded, his voice heavy. "It's our last resort, but we're not there yet. Tomorrow I'll try again with Jon. For now, keep the Lannisters at bay." As they parted, Catelyn's resolve hardened. The Lannisters were a storm, and Jon was the lightning they sought. She would protect him, even if it meant sending him into hiding. But as she lay awake that night, the snow falling outside, she prayed for another way, a path where Lyanna's son could find peace, not just survival. Snow fell into earnest over Winterfell, blanketing the castle in a hush that belied the storm of secrets within its walls. Catelyn Stark stood in the great hall, her hands clasped tightly, watching as servants cleared the remnants of last night's feast. The royal visit, now stretching into its third week, had worn her nerves to a frayed edge. King Robert's boisterous presence, Queen Cersei's relentless probing, and Jaime Lannister's predatory taunts had turned Winterfell into a battlefield, with Jon Snow, Lyanna Stark, and Rhaegar Targaryen's hidden son at its heart. The truth of Jon's parentage, shared only with her husband Eddard Stark, was a blade held to their throats, and the Lannisters were inching closer to grasping it. Ned's attempt to steer Jon toward the Night's Watch had faltered. Jon, perceptive and stubborn, had resisted, sensing the lies beneath Ned's urging. His questions, about his mother, about the sudden protectiveness of his foster parents, had grown sharper, and Catelyn feared he was on the cusp of uncovering something dangerous. Jaime's encounter with Jon in the stables, where he'd called him a secret, and Cersei's chilling description of Jon as princely, had only heightened the peril. Theon Greyjoy's careless gossip had fueled the Lannisters' suspicions, and Catelyn knew they could not wait for the royal party to depart. They needed to act, now, to protect Jon, their children, and the fragile peace of Winterfell. The morning was cold, the air thick with snowflakes that clung to Catelyn's cloak as she crossed the courtyard. She sought Ned, who was in the armory, sharpening ice with a focus that betrayed Dane's turmoil. His gray eyes flicked up as she entered, the weight of their shared secret etched into his face. "Catelyn," he said, setting the sword aside, "you look like you haven't slept." She closed the door, her voice low. "I haven't. Ned, we're out of time. Jon's angry, questioning everything. Jaime's circling him like a wolf, and Cersei's questions are too precise. They're building a case, even if they don't know the shape of it yet." Ned's jaw tightened. "I know. Last night Jon pushed back hard. He knows we're hiding something, but I couldn't tell him the truth. It would break him, and us." Catelyn stepped closer, her voice fierce. "Then we need a new plan. The wall isn't working, Ned. He's too stubborn, too hurt. If we force him, he will run, and a Targaryen loose in the world, even unknowingly, could spark chaos." Ned ran a hand through his hair, his eyes heavy. "I've been thinking of Howland Reed. Greywater Watch could hide him. Howland knows the truth was there at the Tower of Joy. The Crannogmen would keep him safe." Catelyn's heart twisted. "The neck? Ned, that's no life for Lyanna's son. Hiding in swamps, cut off from the world. He deserves better." "It's not what I want," Ned said, his voice firm. "But it's a shield. If the Lannisters get too close, we send him there. For now, I'll try one more time with the wall. Jon's honorable. He might see it as a calling if I frame it right." She shook her head, her hands trembling. "You're asking him to choose exile without knowing why. He's not a pawn, Ned. He's Lyanna's son, your nephew. If we lose his trust, we lose him." Ned took her hand, his grip steady. "We won't lose him. I'll speak to him today after the midday meal. You keep Cersei and Jaime distracted. We're close, Catelyn. We just need to hold the line." She nodded, though her stomach churned. The Game of Thrones was no longer a distant threat. It was here, in their home, and Jon was its unwitting center. She would protect him, even if it meant outwitting lions and sending him into hiding. But as she left the armory, her heart ached for a better path, one where Lyanna's son could live, not just survive. The day unfolded in a flurry of activity. Robert had demanded a sparring tournament to entertain his court, and Winterfell's courtyard was transformed into a makeshift arena. Catelyn oversaw the preparations, ensuring the royal party was comfortable, while Ned coordinated the knights and squires who would compete. Jon was tasked with assisting Sir Roderick in the yard, a role that kept him safely away from the king's notice. But Catelyn's relief was short-lived. She spotted Jaime Lannister near the lists, his white cloak gleaming, his green eyes scanning the crowd. He was watching Jon, she was sure of it, and the thought sent a chill down her spine. She found Theon in the stables, brushing down a horse with exaggerated care. His smirk faded as she approached, her expression stern. "Theon," she said, her voice low. "You've been talking to Jaime Lannister again, haven't you?" He paled, his hands stilling. "No, my lady. I swear I've said nothing since you warned me." She stepped closer, her eyes boring into his. "If I find out you've fed him one word about Jon, you'll answer to Ned. Do you understand?" Theon nodded, his bravado gone. "Yes, my lady, I swear it." She dismissed him, her mind racing. Theon's promise was shaky, and Jaime's interest was a fire that needed quenching. She needed to distract the Lannisters, to throw them off Jon's scent. Her chance came at midday, when Cersei summoned her to the guest chambers. The queen stood by a window, her golden hair catching the pale light, her green eyes sharp as she turned to Catelyn. "Lady Stark," Cersei said, her voice smooth but edged, "your hospitality is impeccable, yet I find myself curious about your household. Young Jon, in particular. He's so reserved. Tell me, what are his ambitions?" Catelyn's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone light. "Jon's a dutiful boy, Your Grace. He trains with his brothers, helps with the household. He's spoken of the Night's Watch, a path of honor." Cersei's smile was thin. "The Wall. A curious choice for a boy with such presence. He carries himself like a lord, not a bastard. I wonder what his mother was like." The question was a trap, and Catelyn sidestepped it. "His mother was a northern woman, long gone. Jon takes after his father in heart and honor. The watch suits his sense of duty." Cersei's eyes gleamed. "Duty? Yes, I see it. But there's something more, isn't there? A spark of something regal. I look forward to learning more about him." Catelyn forced a smile, her heart pounding. "There's little to learn, Your Grace. Jon's a simple boy, raised with Stark values." Cersei waved a hand, dismissing her, but her gaze held Catelyn's for a moment too long. As Catelyn left, her mind raced. Cersei was closing in, and Jaime was her blade. She needed to warn Ned, but he was in the yard, overseeing the tournament. She hurried to find him, her cloak catching the snow as she crossed the courtyard. She found Ned near the lists, watching Robb spar with a Baratheon squire. Jon stood nearby, holding a rack of practice swords, his expression guarded. Ned's eyes met hers, and she pulled him aside, her voice low. "Cersei's pressing harder," she said. She called Jon regal this time, and Jaime's watching him in the yard. "We can't wait, Ned. If Jon won't take the wall, we need to prepare for Greywater Watch." Ned's face darkened. "I'll speak to him now, before the tournament starts. Keep Cersei occupied. If Jaime gets near Jon, signal Sir Roderick to intervene." She nodded, her resolve hardening. As Ned approached Jon, Catelyn returned to the stands, taking a seat near Cersei. The queen's attention was on the sparring, but her eyes flicked toward Jon more than once. Catelyn engaged her in talk of the South, hoping to distract her, but Cersei's responses were clipped, her focus elsewhere. The tournament began, the courtyard alive with the clash of steel and the cheers of the crowd. Robb fought well, earning Robert's applause, but Catelyn's eyes were on Jon, who stood at the edge of the yard, his posture tense. Jaime was nearby, his white cloak stark against the snow, his gaze fixed on Jon. Catelyn's heart pounded. She signaled Sir Roderick, who moved closer to Jon, his hand on his sword hilt. As the sparring continued, Ned pulled Jon aside, leading him to a quiet corner of the yard. Catelyn watched from the stands, her breath catching. She couldn't hear their words, but Jon's face was a storm of emotions. Doubt, anger, hurt. Ned's gestures were earnest, his voice low, and Catelyn prayed he could sway him. In the corner of the yard, Ned faced Jon, the snow falling softly between them. Jon's gray eyes were sharp, his jaw tight, and Ned knew this was his last chance to guide him without breaking the truth. "Jon," he said, his voice steady, "I've been hard on you, pushing the wall. But it's because I see your strength, your honor. The Night's Watch isn't exilehood, it's a brotherhood, a place to make your own name." Jon's hands clenched. "You keep saying that, my lord, but it feels like you're sending me away. Jaime Lannister called me a secret. Lady Stark's kinder but scared. What are you hiding?" Ned's chest ached. He wanted to tell Jon everything, to give him Lyanna's love, Rhaegar's legacy, but the risk was too great. "I'm hiding nothing you need to know," he said, the lie bitter. "The South is dangerous, Jon. The Lannisters, the King's court, they'd use you to hurt me, to hurt our family. The wall's your shield, a chance to be more than a bastard." Jon's eyes glistened, his voice raw. "I've never been more than a bastard here. But you're asking me to give up everything. Robb, Arya, Winterfell, without telling me why. I deserve better." Ned stepped closer, his hand on Jon's shoulder. "You deserve the world, Jon, but the world's cruel, and I'm trying to keep you safe. Your mother, she'd want this for you. Trust me." Jon pulled away, his voice breaking. "I want to trust you, but I can't. Not like this. If you won't tell me the truth, I'll find it myself." Ned's heart sank as Jon walked away, his figure swallowed by the snow. He had failed, and the truth loomed closer than ever. He returned to the stands, his face grim, and found Catelyn waiting, her eyes wide with worry. "He's not going," Ned said, his voice low. "He's angry, Catelyn. He's talking about finding the truth himself." Catelyn's hands trembled. "Then we need to move him." "Greywater watch, Ned. Tonight before the Lannisters close in." Ned nodded, his voice heavy. "I'll arrange it. I'll send a message to Howland, prepare a small escort. But Jon, he won't go willingly." Catelyn's resolve hardened. "Then we convince him it's temporary. A journey, not exile. We can't lose him, Ned." That evening the feast was subdued, the snow keeping many indoors. Robert drank heavily, his mood sour, while Cersei sat in cool silence, her eyes scanning the hall. Jaime was absent, and Catelyn's unease grew. Where was he? She kept Jon in sight, seated with Robb and Theon, his expression guarded. Ned was at the high table, his face a mask of calm, but Catelyn saw the strain in his eyes. As the meal ended, Catelyn slipped into the corridor, intending to check on the younger children, but she froze as she heard voices. Jaime's, smooth and mocking, and Jon's, tense and defiant. They were in a side passage, out of sight. She crept closer, her heart pounding, and peered around a corner. Jaime stood with his back to the wall, his white cloak pooling at his feet. Jon faced him, his hand on his dagger, his posture rigid. "You're a puzzle, Snow," Jaime was saying, his voice laced with amusement. "A bastard with a lord's bearing, dreams of the wall, and parents who guard you like a treasure. What's the secret, boy? Who are you really?" Jon's jaw tightened. "I'm Ned Stark's son. That's all you need to know." Jaime chuckled, stepping closer. "Oh, I think there's more. Your mother, perhaps? Someone important? Or is it your father who's the key? Not Ned Stark at all, maybe?" Catelyn's blood ran cold. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Sir Jaime, you're far from the hall. Jon, come with me." Both turned, Jon's eyes wide with relief, Jaime's narrowing with amusement. "Lady Stark," Jaime said, bowing slightly. "Always so timely. I was merely chatting with young Snow." "Chat elsewhere," Catelyn said, her tone icy. "Jon, now!" Jon hesitated, his gaze flicking between them, then followed her, his steps quick. Jaime watched them go, his smile predatory. "You can't hide him forever, my lady," he called after them. Catelyn led Jon to the godswood, her heart pounding. The snow fell heavily now, the weirwood's red eyes glowing through the flakes. She turned to him, her voice urgent. "Jon," she said, "you need to listen to me. The Lannisters are dangerous. They're asking questions they shouldn't, and you're not safe here." Jon's eyes searched hers, hurt and anger mingling. "I know they're dangerous, but you and Lord Stark are hiding something. Jaime's right. I'm a secret." "Why?" Catelyn's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him the truth, to ease his pain, but the risk was too great. "You're our son," she said, the lie bitter. "We're protecting you from those who'd use you against us. But Winterfell's not safe anymore. We're sending you to a friend in the Neck, just for a time." Jon's face hardened. "The Neck? You're sending me away like I'm a problem. Tell me the truth, my lady. Who am I?" Her heart broke. "You're Jon Snow, raised as a Stark. That's enough. Trust us, Jon, please." He shook his head, his voice rose. "I can't. Not anymore." As he turned to leave, Catelyn grabbed his arm. "Wait. If you stay, the Lannisters will destroy you. Go to the Neck, just for now. We'll bring you back when it's safe." Jon's eyes glistened, but he nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "All right, but this isn't the end." That night, Ned arranged a small escort, 2 trusted guards and Maester Luwin, to take Jon to Greywater Watch under cover of darkness. Catelyn watched from their chambers as the group slipped out through a side gate, Jon's figure cloaked and hooded, swallowed by the snow. Her heart ached, but relief mingled with her pain. He was safe for now, beyond the Lannisters' reach. Ned joined her, his face heavy with grief. "He's gone," he said, his voice low. "Howland will keep him hidden. But he's angry, Catelyn. He may not forgive us." She took his hand, her voice firm. "He's alive. That's what matters. We'll bring him back when the Lannisters are gone, when Robert's court leaves." Ned nodded, but his eyes were distant. "And if the truth comes out? If Jon finds it himself?" Catelyn's resolve hardened. Then we face it together. For Lyanna, for Jon, for our family. As the snow fell outside, Winterfell stood quiet, its secrets buried for now. The Lannisters would find nothing, and Jon was safe in the next shadows. But Catelyn knew the Game of Thrones was far from over. Jon Snow, the hidden dragon, would return, and when he did, the North would tremble.